Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fintech Combine. I am your host, Kris Kovacs, and this is the series where we talk with and sometimes about community-based institutions, their digital and business transformation projects, and we meet the innovators, entrepreneurs, and fintechs that make it all possible. On today's episode, we're speaking with Frank Mazza from Metallicus and John Ainsworth from Metal CUSO about their new collaboration and what this means for blockchain and credit unions. If you're ready, let's suit up and get out on the field. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Why don't we start, Frank, by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company, Metallicus?
Yeah, so I'm the head of blockchain for institutions and fintechs at Metallicus. I've been here for about 3 years now. Spent about 9-10 years in banking and finance prior, leading digital transformation. When you talk about digital transformation, online banking, mobile banking, loan and mortgage apps. I've worked with the Fiservs, the Jack Henrys, the Fannie Maes in terms of like onboarding, incorporating loan apps, and really been passionate about new technology and just kind of diving back into that time in the last 9 to 10 years. Really discovered blockchain as a whole, and I never let it go. So I had actually previously engaged with Metallicus prior to coming here. I was a member, a user of multiple applications, or WebAuth application, their MetalPay application. I've actually worked in integration with them with one of the fintechs that I was working with prior, and seen what they were doing in the blockchain space, primarily geared around banking, and that was kind of the green light for me to kind of take this path. So, Metallicus, I can go down a whole path of the different products and the suites that this company has built, but I think Metallicus as a whole has spent the last almost 10 years focused on building top of the line products in the blockchain and crypto industry. Anything from our layer ones, layer twos. We have decentralized exchanges, identity products, consumer applications for crypto, and ultimately the one that I primarily focus on, which is our layer zero blockchain specifically for institutions.
John Ainsworth, my friend, tell us a little bit about your background and what you do for Bonafide.
Thanks for having us. Good to see you again, as always. Most people know my long-term background with Visa and MasterCard, and that's kind of how I got introduced to the cooperatives. And back in 2017, we started what most people still know us as a CU Ledger, right? Which was a kind of a research to action of around 40 credit unions, mostly domestic, a few in Canada. Say, hey, can we find a use case for blockchain? So that's kind of how the journey started. We changed the name to Bonafide a couple of years ago, and the kind of background was, Bonafide as, hey, we know Kris is Kris. The little two I's always symbolize blockchain. So, but really around identity was kind of where we landed in terms of use case. So that was up till December 22nd. December 22nd, now we will be known as Metal CUSO. So through the acquisition of Metallicus acquiring Bonafide, we're actually a CUSO. Think of it as a subsidiary, and I'm the general manager of that. So all things are changing.
Excellent, excellent. So, Frank, tell us a little bit about the innovation that Metallicus has on the Metal blockchain and how you're using that to drive innovation for financial institutions.
Yeah, of course. So when you think about blockchain, Metal blockchain itself is actually the only layer zero blockchain built for compliance. So Metal blockchain is the base layer blockchain. So in order to deploy a layer one, you essentially need to have a layer zero to deploy that. The benefits of that blockchain gives you full control and customization of that chain. So with Metal, for example, we're actually the only one that has been built on that compliance of BSA, AML, GDPR standards. We enable secure private subnets, a number of different tailored solutions that allow bridgeless interoperability. When you think about digital identity, on-chain data storage, enhanced audit, tokenized assets. So Metal blockchain has kind of built this for the banking industry. The biggest value on top of that is that Metal is also one of the fastest, if not the fastest, blockchain in this space. When you think about infinite subnets, we're less than, I think, a half a second transaction finality versus when you think of Bitcoin, it's like 60 minutes, Ethereum is 6 minutes. So when you talk about processing speeds, We are the fastest blockchain with compliance that's built in that gives you that control.
And you touched on it a little bit. What are the particular applications that institutions are using your Metal blockchain to provide to their members and customers?
Yeah, so today we're focused primarily around a number of different use cases that we're exploring. So one of those use cases is driven around loan participation. We're looking at faster payments as a very big one, integrating and working with a number of other fintechs to be able to provide instant payment transfers, leveraging FedNow Rails. We are also working on, I think, a stablecoin issuance. Mm-hmm. So being able to leverage faster payments through stablecoins. And then we've also built a number of integrations with banking cores. So we've spent a lot of time, as I mentioned earlier, when we look at Metallicus as a whole, we've built for years. And we've been able to really focus on that narrative. And now we're in a position with that building where we've done these integrations to the banking cores with the Fiservs, Jack Henrys, relationships with Temenos, really to expand, the reach in the market.
John, how is Metal CUSO going to help bring these solutions to credit unions?
Great question. So, I've always thought about ecosystems as networks, right? You had VisaNet was a network. You had MasterCard access. So I've always thought about kind of this network mentality. It's kind of why we acquire CUFX, CU Exchange. It's like the network. And so, that layer zero becomes important again because, you looked at like who owns that platform, that network. Does a core own it? Does another blockchain own it? So the lens that we're looking at for Metal CUSO is having what I'll consider like that private network or that network that's owned by the credit union. So when I start to think about those use cases and that peer-to-peer, okay, great. How do I do payments cross-border within that credit union ecosystem? So, our intention is to bring that network community and then also the products and services. So it's all about the network, who owns it, what's the data associated, what's the cost associated, what's the performance associated with it. So bringing that into the credit union ecosystem is that, what we call private permission kind of network. Metallicus language is subnet. Usually we call it a node, but in principle, it's the same. All about the network. So that's really what we're focused. And the use cases that Frank are talking about, the good point, they're real. So it's not, back in the old days where we had to go look, what network do you use and have to go build it in the capital, right? So, it's about the network and the deployment of the use cases we can bring into the ecosystem.
Very cool. Frank, is the Metal blockchain available for development by outside developers as well, or is it exclusively managed? Managed is probably the wrong word. Is it exclusively used by Metallicus to provide applications to consumers?
No, it's open to everyone. I think when you think about Metal blockchain with institutions and kind of the piggyback a little bit on John's kind of comment, one of the biggest values of Metal blockchain is that having and we're for institutions, the biggest value for institutions is that they have access to the core developer, which is Metallicus. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really the biggest difference maker in the entire ecosystem and advantage is that you can work directly with us, our developers. You could work with outside developers as well, but ultimately, if you're an institution, you really want to be able to work directly with the core developer to understand what they're building, what has been built, what could be modified. I think another competitive advantage in that scenario is that if an institution did want to customize something or did want something else as part of the chain, the benefit is that Metallicus, being the core developer, could build that in 2, 3, 4 weeks versus maybe 2, 3, 4 months, if not longer. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of the biggest advantage that you get when you look at us and building with us. But yeah, absolutely, anybody can build a Metal blockchain, but specifically if you're an institution, we support throughout the entire process.
Gotcha. John, our blockchain's been around for more than 10 years, right? It's been around for a long time. And even before that. Are credit unions warming to the concept of using blockchain to provide and underpin the services they provide their members and customers?
Great question. So it's evolving. So I would say the interest is still there because, as you know, the people have been following this a long time. Like, what are you trying to solve for, right? So that sense, that intellectual curiosity is there's something there. It's still evolving. I will say, there's a lot of new players into the ecosystem. So if you look back when we started, there's been a lot of transition of who's a CTO or a CIO. And so there's kind of a renewed interest. And to be honest, it was kind of surprising to me to where this community woke up and Frank, kudos to him, he'd already been nurturing. And there are a lot of the players we know. Some of them were original C Ledger investors, but the actual persons that were coming in were looking at it through a different lens. I would say digital assets, you're following the administration like everyone's, hearing now, I'll say Chairman Hopman in terms of the ambitions, NCUA, obviously looking at that. America's Credit Union just released their priorities for 2025. Digital assets was a component of that. So it's definitely the market's catching up. So there's a renewed interest. It's not universal. There's still some that are scratching their head like, I still don't get it, but it's evolving.
There's a lot of people, and I'll throw this up as a jump ball to either of you, right? There's a lot of executives who kind of conflate crypto and blockchain, right? Still, like, how can we help them understand the difference between those, Frank? When you meet somebody who's a relative newcomer to crypto, maybe they've heard crypto and blockchain, and they think one is the other. How do you help them kind of explain it and separate the difference between the two?
Yeah, I can jump on that. So I think it's like basically the perfect setup for me on this one, because when we think about, crypto and blockchain, let's go back to like FTX, right? The whole FTX, debacle and everything that's happened. It really put a huge setback, especially for our vision in banking and blockchain. It set us back for about a year. Primarily because that scenario right there is where people really said, is crypto and blockchain the same thing? There was like that lack of understanding. Prior to FTX, we were in a position where we had a number of institutions were like, oh, we'll explore, we'll do this. We don't know much, but we're ready. And then that changed to, okay, well, crypto and blockchain are the same thing.
Right.
And that's where back, I think it was 2022, Metallicus formed and had a research program. And that research program was primarily built for us and Metal Blockchain to be able to really understand what banks are thinking. What are the challenges? How do we kind of differentiate those two terms and make them feel comfortable? And that's kind of where we transitioned in 2024, early, like back in January of last year, where we essentially launched our innovation program. And that innovation program was really taking all that information from the research that we've done that year prior and said, okay, what are the challenges and how do we solve them? And that is where this program basically takes a number of credit unions as a community. We've identified that issues where that lack of understanding between blockchain and crypto, they didn't have resources. Is it a core developer? Is it an external developer? We don't have resources. The cost is too high. So we basically said, hey, what if we build this program where we bring all of these credit unions together to innovate, and let's work with them to say, let's make this a little bit easier. And not only are you working with just us and Metallicus, but you're also working with the whole network of credit unions. And long-term, huge advantages and benefits. And today, I think we're at 16, 17 credit unions and counting, not to mention a number that are in the pipeline. And we expect to grow that tremendously in the next, say, 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, Kris, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind taking up, because obviously my age demographic, I get it's like, okay, we just heard Frank, and then afterwards it'll be like, okay, what the heck does that mean, right? So I translate a little different, because if I asked you and said, do you participate in digital currencies today, right? The typical answer for my age demographic would be like, I don't. But then you say, okay, well, if I think of it as a store of value, say, do you have a Starbucks app? Well, yeah, I do. Well, how do you fund it? Oh, great. I take money into it. I have that as a store of value, and then I use that for a value of exchange. Do you have airline points? Yep. Okay, great. I have it. So that digital currency mentality is already there. You don't talk about it in the terms of, okay, is that, what do you use on that as the value exchange? But so when you start to that, it kind of pulls back and says, okay, it's a store of value. It starts to at least, oh, okay, now I start to get a little bit of it,
Right. Crypto is, if I get it right, crypto is the store of value, and blockchain is the how it is stored, how it is transferred, how it is owned, right? Are the material functions of the blockchain itself. Frank, did I get it right?
Yeah, Mhm.
Excellent. Excellent. Where do you think credit unions have the nearest opportunity to leverage blockchain to improve the experience for their members? Where should I start? If I'm a credit union executive, where do I start?
It's a loaded question, but I'm going to take it back, Kris, to one of our conversations where, what are the easy wins or the singles, the use case you've talked about, which is in your supplier vendors. And
Mm-hmm.
how do I basically, use on-chain to leverage? How do I know who they are? How do I know what the terms are?
Mm-hmm.
So the element of smart contracts is
Yeah.
one that's coming up a lot because it's an easy one. It's not controversial. So, I'll let Frank add color, but there's definitely some easy wins that I think are out there, and smart contracts are clearly one that's popping up a lot.
Mm.
Yeah, I would piggyback and say smart contracts are the immediate. They're the softer play for
Mm-hmm.
institutions to kind of get on board. Easy win, get the access. I think when we look at other easy wins and things that we've heard from institutions, and John and I actually just had a conversation last week with a credit union about it, and they're comparing, well, why blockchain, right? And the answer from that CTO was, well, it's the most secure, right? It's the strongest, right? So when you think about infinite and immutable, blockchain is just that. So being able to leverage that from a risk or fraud protection, that's a huge value that may be an easy win. I'd say if there's another solution is, credit unions are really trying to be innovative and they want to be innovative. And I do believe that, at some point in a very near future, that crypto component will also play a role to increase
Mm-hmm.
deposits. So whether that is directly with stablecoins, whether that is with Bitcoin, one of the biggest advantages of where we're at and what we're doing with Metallicus is that, being a FedNow service provider, certified service provider, we have the ability to do those on and off ramps and being able to work, directly with those other vendors to be able to facilitate that.
Right. There's a lot of talk right now about stable coins.
Oh yeah.
Stable coins, I think 2025 could be the year of stable coins. For the home gamers who are watching this, who wants to tell us a little about what are stable coins and how could they be used by institutions and ultimately by consumers as well?
Frank, I'll let you go first, and then I'll translate.
Yeah, I'll try to go less on the technical side, but stablecoin will allow that faster payment. I think let me share how we look at it, in terms of issuing the stablecoin. So Metallicus has its own stablecoin as well, which is called XMD, and it's a basket of other stablecoins. So whether that's like PYUSD, if it's USDC, and whatnot. So when you think about, if an institution were to deploy their own stablecoin, ABC, credit union coin, the ability is to use that for a number of different scenarios. It could be used for rewards, for tokenization, to be able to facilitate, to send from A to B in terms of a crypto wallet. I think that's kind of one of the scenarios that we look at it is, can you deploy a stable coin for that specific credit union and then use that and send it into your digital asset wallet within the Metallicus ecosystem. And leveraging that is one of the scenarios. Primarily the biggest value of that is there's more profit. You eliminate a lot of those interchange fees and it's a lot faster, right? And you also can really start to leverage the rewards aspect of it in the future, which is the key.
I love the rewards concept. That's new to me. That's neat. John, he's gonna take the interchange away from your old friends at Visa and MasterCard. What do you have to say?
And I'm going to
about
blow
that?
up their network, right? So it's kind of like I'm going to blow up everything we worked so hard to build. I think first let me acknowledge, as an old school correspondent banker, there's a lot of use cases around stablecoin that are not consumer oriented, right? So that's the first thing. And so you look at Chase, I mean, they've already deployed it. They've had it for some time. They're looking at it in terms of more efficient movement of money, faster, cheaper. There's definitely an application for that. If you look in our world, we have corporates, we have models where there's funds moved, we have shared branching. So I think there's some immediate use cases that not, necessarily be known to the member consumer, but it's how do I move money faster, cheaper? Valera, great. So they're using FIS, they're using Fiserv, they're using other networks. So I think that's it. Now, loyalty is one that I'm really interested in as well. And again, if you look at loyalty points for airlines, right? So credit unions have tried to figure out how to play in that game. How do I reward loyalty to drive deposits or loans or what have you? Buying points, as you know, is expensive. There's a tremendous amount of fraud in it. So that whole loyalty, how do I redefine? Um, I think there's a play there. It won't look necessarily like crypto or stable coins, but yet again, how do I have that store of value? And there's of course the traditional use cases we see for stable coins as well. But I think there's a couple different angles that can help credit unions be more efficient, and there's still value today while you're kind of building for tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say the only other comment I'll have, and I think you made an important point about 2025 being kind of an interesting opportunity. That's kind of why we looked at kind of actually merging Metallicus. Is like I see a 6 to 8 month window where you've got the technology side, you've got the market interest side, and equally important, you've got the regulatory side that are kind of aligned. That's a very unique window, and easily could be missed if we don't execute 2025. It's going to be a different game, 2026, 2027. So I think you brought up a really good point is, the regulatory environment's kind of lining up, especially, for us with NCUA. That hasn't happened for me in my entire career. They're always the bad guys, right? They're never the good guys.
Yeah, we've got this 18-month window where it feels like anything's possible, right? It's kind of really where most people are at this point. Tell me, and you may not be ready to answer this question yet, but is the Metal CUSO raising money?
Great question. I would say, as everyone, you're always raising funds to basically get you to that next level. I think if you look at what we're thinking about, and again, there's some considerations here, it's more how do I deliver and enhance? So as opposed to where we originally, how do you raise funds to go build products and services? In our world, sometimes you call it growth capital, if you will, but it's really how do you extend those services? So I say that's on the roadmap, and more will be coming about that. But you're always looking at how do I basically enhance so I can deliver funds and drive value back for our owners.
Yeah, this is I think an ideal CUSO scenario, right? Because whenever you have CUSOs that are going to go out and build technology, we know that's going to be expensive over time to be able to do.
We bear the marks of that, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But when you can find a partner who's done it, who has it out there, who has delivered and has this capability, being able to have a CUSO now bring the thought process together, like Frank was talking about, bring the interested parties together to build applications on something that's already there. I think that's really an ideal scenario for a future CUSO.
We would agree. We would agree.
Well, you guys are smart, right? What else do you expect? Right? These are the things that are going to happen. So, if someone's interested in learning more about Metallicus and Metal CUSO, how do they find you guys? How do they find this on the internet?
Yeah,
Frank, you want to go?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, Metallicus, you can go to the website and whatnot and inquire about a number of the different products that we have, see all the products underneath the ecosystem. But if regarding Metal Blockchain, if it's looking about really starting to get and be a part of the network, or join an innovation program to kind of get a kickstart into it, and collaborate with the other credit unions, you can reach out directly to me, and the goal would be to facilitate them into the program.
Very cool. Very cool. John, how can credit unions get engaged with what you're doing now as part of the Metallicus and Metal CUSO group?
Sure. Well, if you're actually a member pass user today, a client customer, by default, you actually come over and you're already engaged. So for that, it's really who do you want to be the participant, but you're kind of already in the community by default. For those that were original CU Ledger investors, you have the opportunity. And so again, going back to those that had the interest of innovation, you're kind of in. And then there's the broader community of credit unions that haven't played before, that have an interest. Certainly those are welcomed as well. So there's kind of 3 steps. We will be at GAC, so we're going to have a lot of presence there. That will be kind of our really kickoff in terms of the new CUSO. There'll be a lot of Q&As, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll participate in the traditional events where we've been there before, but just as Metal CUSO and not necessarily as Bonafide.
Mm-hmm. I assume you'll be at NCUSO as well?
Absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. I think this is really something credit unions are going to be looking at in 2025. I think this is your year. I'm excited about the combination of your firms. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Look forward to seeing what you do. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks for having us.
This podcast is sponsored by Constellation. We're empowering community financial institutions with innovative digital solutions, powered by fintech, driven by your roadmap. Join us as we navigate the future of digital banking together. For more information on how we can be your partner for digital transformation, visit www.constellation.coop.
I'd really like to thank Frank and John for joining us today. I think there's so much for credit unions to understand about the possibilities with blockchain and how we can use those to create really engaging services for credit union members. If you enjoy our content, please like and subscribe on your platform of choice. Be sure to check out our LinkedIn channel for some additional bonus material, and we will see you next time.